Welcome to Business Success Tips. We're going to make more money in less time and have more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman, and I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. I have with me this morning Clay and Lewis from Dash Solutions. So I assuming it's not a race, right? What does Dash Solutions do? And maybe a little your backstory of how you got involved in the first place.
Yeah, it's a good question. And obviously, I really appreciate it. And just kind of quick by way of introductions, my name is Clay Buckwhites. As Paul said, I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Dash Solutions. And Lewis Campbell is on my team as a Partner Development Representative. The best way that I can frame Dash Solutions is a payment optimization tool provider. And while that seems like a lot of things all kind of looped into one, it boils down to the fact that we have tools that help companies replace inefficiencies in the payments that they're making, whether that be to their employees, to people that they're working with, their clients in some instances. But across the board, it boils down to that in and of itself. And from my standpoint specifically, and Paul, to your client base that we're talking here today, it primarily focuses on replacing cash and checks in the business operations that they have. So that's really what it boils down to.
So replacing cash and checks, that sounds like a heck of a task. So give me an example. I'm just going to say I'm a $2 million remodeling contractor. I have, 8 employees and I use, Visa to pay for some people to pay their bills. I have like some kind of company that, does instant financing for me for whatever reason. And I'm using QuickBooks and I'm using bank transfers, checks, and credit cards. That'd
Yeah,
be a
it's a
typical
great
guy for
scenario.
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And it honestly frames up really well for us. So I think from there, what we typically do in our process is start to break down some of those payments that are being made. Right. So the first one is, okay, let's identify who of those employees currently don't have bank accounts. Right. Are you employing anybody, Paul, in this scenario that doesn't have access to a bank account, wants to get paid in a check on a regular basis? If so, then we have a solution that allows for you to
Except for
replace
one,
that
he
for.
wants cash. No, just kidding. It's fine.
That's right. No, but it's a good scenario. It's a great scenario. In those instances, we have a solution in our pay vertical that allows for us to replace those checks, replace that cash for that one employee with a card, a pay card that then to you on your QuickBooks system looks and feels a lot like a direct deposit account. Has an account number, has a routing number associated with it, and then for the employee, they get to do what they want with their money once they receive it. So they get it in card form. They can go pull all the cash off if they want to at one of our 60,000 ATMs nationwide that's free to the cardholders. And then from there, they could also use that card as a tool. Looks and feels a lot like a mobile banking service that would be a part of that on the application on their smartphone or on their website that they have access to. So again, that's the first one, right? From there, we then start to further break down some of those other payments that you said you were making as the contractor here. Okay, you have those Visa cards that you're using for business purchases for those 8 employees. You've given those 8 employees buying power based on your company funds. They then have either a credit card or a debit card that they can go use at a Home Depot or a Walmart or an Ace Hardware or wherever it may be to purchase additional supplies or tools or whatever it may be. We have a solution in our spend vertical that allows for you to give them something that offers a little bit more control over when, where, and how your company funds are used. Again, there's some reporting features that are built into that don't oftentimes come with an actual card program themselves. There's an application for the cardholder themselves to reconcile purchases on demand. But on top of that, we have an instant system to where you can push or pull funds from that card to your account to give that purchasing power, expand the purchasing power, remove the purchasing power, or even completely lock that card down if you leave a $0 balance on that. So that's the second piece of it. Then the third piece of it is paying those other people that you're working with, right? So you may be working with other contractors, you may be working with other vendors, you may be working with people who are, giving you the supplies in a lumber company or something along those lines. We then have another solution that would allow for those payments to be able to be made through our disbursement vertical. And then last but not least, if and when, Paul, you want to go and reward your 8 employees for a great month or a job well done or for completing the project on time or maybe even a little early, instead of saying, hey, Lewis and Clay and Marie, I'm going to drop that into your paycheck next time, you could actually provide them with something in the reward card system that we have. That's our fourth vertical that we have, and fourth line of business that we have, that creates a differentiation of funds, separates the pay from the special reward that you're giving them to make it a little bit more special along the way. So again, to touch on that, for that, hypothetical instance for your company that you framed there for me, there are 4 lines of business that fit within our 4 verticals of business that we have in pay, spend, disbursement, and reward. And that's kind of where we start to build that ecosystem of payment optimization as a whole.
So what's the advantage of doing it over the system I'm using?
That's the beauty of it. It's not having to replace the system you're currently using. We just add on to what you're currently doing. So we're not here to replace your QuickBooks. We're not here to replace your operating account for your bank. We're here to go into those systems and give you an additional cost-effective way to make those payments more efficiently.
What do you mean by more efficient? Because I've got, it's sort of, it ain't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
yeah,
I'm looking at, well, I'm using credit cards. I'm paying on cash on Tuesday, whatever it is I'm doing, right? I'm doing all this stuff, and it seems to be working okay for me. I mean, I don't look at it as like, oh my God, I'm going to go broke if I don't do this. So why would I bother to change it to what you've got?
Well, from the first standpoint of it, replacing checks, we can kind of touch on that piece as a whole. Checks are an extremely volatile way of paying. There is a increased fraud component with the technology, right? We're here trying to offer a technology that combats the technology and check fraud and the fraudsters that are out there trying to steal your information from your check specifically. It's becoming easier and easier to do as the technology advances for them. And it's as simple as going in and replacing the handwriting, even the signature of it, and even sometimes in certain cases printing other checks and cashing those checks on top of it. So again, that piece of it from a security standpoint, it may not be a cost that you right now are currently looking at, but in the future, you could potentially have that option of someone coming in and adding a zero to your $3,000 check. And trust me, the difference between $3,000 and $30,000 it's a pretty big difference.
That brings up an interesting question, Clay. Now, I don't know if this is even relevant to you guys or not, but I've had a couple clients. The good news about AI, it makes things easier for the good guys and the bad guys, right? And so he'd been paying his bank, a bank transfer check, I forget what it was. But what happened is somehow AI got in, was monitoring his bookkeeper and all that kind of figure out. Some, notarious person got in there and did all this stuff. He transferred $80,000 to the wrong place. He thought it was the right place. He got this email and said, it looked like it was from his bank. Hey, can you change the account number by this account number using this account instead of that account? So his bookkeeper said, oh, no problem. They changed the account, transferred the money. And the bank said, where's the money? He said, I transferred. He goes, no, you didn't. Well, it's an $80,000 oops. And that happened like 3 times this year with different clients. So obviously fraud's getting easier and easier to do for people that are good at it. And you're sort of screwed because the bank says, not my problem. He says, not my problem. And so where does it go? To court, which is never good.
That's right.
Right. And then it's really tough. And now they think some insurance is against that. But what I hear you saying is even on a smaller level, that it's harder to fraud your system than it is the conventional system.
That's correct. Yeah. And again, it's something that's covered across the board. And the beauty of working with Dash Solutions versus one of the other guys, if you will, out there is the fact that we do have everything under one roof. So because we aren't necessarily the bank and we aren't necessarily the card processing company as themselves, we are the program manager. It allows for us to have, first of all of the things under one roof, but also take the liability on ourselves. And so we're essentially in this scenario playing quarterback for the client in this instance. So client comes to us and says, hey, we're having an issue. We had a check or we had a wire issue that went through and there was fraud on that. Okay, great. We can help coordinate that effort to make sure that everything gets put in place. But again, to your point, Paul, it's probably not going to happen because we have all the safeguards already set up to where the money can't move off of those cards. All of our cards are designed so they cannot be overdrawn. So whether it's a payroll card, a disbursement card, an expense management solution, or a reward solution, if the money's there and it's $200, there can only be $200 that's used on that card. So if somebody goes out, and I'm sure you've experienced it before. I've experienced on my credit card and my debit card. Again, with the way that fraudsters' technology is advancing, my credit card information gets stolen. Somebody tries to go buy a $250,000 RV. Well, unfortunately, because my credit limit is high enough, that's something that could immediately get pulled off of it, right? Luckily, I was able to go through the system and obviously say that I wasn't, in northern New York or wherever it was, and explain that as
Well,
fraud.
then it's
But if
even a
that was
bigger
happening on my
problem
debit
because
account,
then they cancel all your cards, right? Even if
that's
somebody's
right.
I've had this happen, I'm sure, well, where somebody, somehow fraud your card and you're on vacation, you only got like a card, right? And they said, this card has been canceled. We'll send you a new card in the mail in 3 weeks. You go, excuse me, I have no money and I'm in Italy. Like, come on, help me out here, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, the ability for our team and our technology to be able to block that up front so that if and when that does happen, we can catch it earlier. You're also not going to lose any of that money, right? It's going to get flagged. It's going to send a push notification, and those steps start to go into motion again so that we can kind of quarterback the process, helps us combat that earlier. But again, to your point about the benefit of working with Dash as a whole, it's because it is all under one roof, right? So if there are cash and checks that are being used for per diems or for expense management, or if you as the business owner don't want to provide those 8 employees with a company line of credit, right, however much that company line of credit may be, you can provide them with a solution that's a little bit more specific and a little bit stricter
So I can
on
say,
when, where, and how those
so
funds
I
are
can say,
used.
Frank, your credit limit is 1,000. Mary, your credit limit is 2,000. Mary, my bookkeeper, since you're paying the vendors, your credit limit is 100,000. But you can change credit limits per each person in your company.
You can, but the beauty of it is that it's not even credit, right? It's a good funds model. So those funds you can actually push from your operating account to the card. If you don't want any money to be available on that card, you can make that amount 0, and then there's no operating power within that card itself. That's the spend solution specifically. So again, the control feature of it, when I go back to what I said initially about the spend program specifically, is it's about having an addition to the control over when, where, and how company funds are spent on that spend model specifically. Again, you could talk about the rest of the lines of business and the benefits about those, but when we're talking about that in particular, it's those things specifically, and then the reporting on the back end. No more reason to have to hang on to receipts when you go to the gas station or Home Depot, whatever it is. You take a picture of the receipt, you load it into the app, that then connects it to the purchase that was made on the management side of things. So you, Paul, the business owner, can click on that purchase that Clay made at Home Depot today, see when it was made, why it was made, the amount, the time, the address, and then the actual picture of the receipt as well that I took once I, stood there at the register and took the picture.
So give me like an example, not sort of a testimonial, but you're going to say it, of a company that's gone from the conventional method of handling money to your Dash
Yeah,
system of handling money and what difference it made in that company.
that's a
Not
good
use
question.
ABC construction, but just give me an example of what difference it made.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's also important to note that because of the 26 years of experience that we have in the payments industry, and the different verticals of solutions that we offer, that this is not something that is specific to the construction industry, the contractor industry. We work with hundreds of thousands of clients across every industry you can think of. But for the construction industry specifically, what comes to mind for me, we're based here in Birmingham, Alabama. What comes to mind for me is a painter. There's a local company here in town that owns a painting business, and for them, they were struggling with a couple of things. They were struggling with the per diem side of things. They were struggling with the company expense side of things, and then the pay piece of it. Those were the 3 things that we solved for them immediately through a conversation through one of our partners, similar to yourself. The partner introduced them to us. They came to us on the basis of the first piece, which was the pay piece. And they said, listen, we have 40 employees right now of our 60 employees that don't have access to a bank account, or they don't want to give us their bank account information because they don't trust, Big Brother or whatever it may be. We then provided them with the payroll card solution. And might I add, the payroll card solution does not cost the employer anything. So we are never going to charge for that solution at all. And then across our 4 lines of business, the pay, the spend, the dispersion, the reward, the solution is always designed to be used for free by the cardholder themselves. So if you get a payroll card, you have the ability to go use that at no cost to you. And if you are the business owner and you're using the pay card solution, we're never going to charge you for that either. So all that being said, we provided this painting company with the 40 payroll cards. The 40 employees then had access to a debit card solution, right, that looks and feels and acts just like our bank account does. They're able to go make online purchases. They have access to bill pay, all of those things that come with that. The employer then had no fraud risk when it came to cutting 40 checks a week. Think about that. 40 checks a week for 52 weeks across the entire year. The chances of somebody, a fraudster is what we like to call it, getting their hands on that company's information, that owner's signature, ends up being pretty high. And again, the ability for those fraudsters to go in and make malicious transactions on that money was something that they did not want to have to deal with anymore. And so with us replacing it with a card system for all those employees, it gave the employer an account and routing number, just like those other 20 employees that he had who already had direct deposit information, to where he just pushed every Friday. He pushed that payment out through his QuickBooks, account, routing number, name, how much the person gets paid, and it lands on their pay card the same as it did with the bank accounts that were currently being used. Then we go into the spend piece, and we've already talked about that in depth a little bit. But again, it was the ability to say, okay, Clay is going to go to Home Depot right now to go get some foam rollers because we ran out of foam rollers on the project. Okay, how much is that going to cost? We think it's going to cost $60. Great. That business owner then was able to push $60 to the employee's card. They were able to use it, categorize the transaction, take a picture of the receipt on their phone. Business owner then had an immediate reconciliation of that purchase on his books, and there was no extra money out there to be potentially used if the employee was a bad actor or whatever it may be. And last but not least, the per diem piece of it. Each one of those 60 employees that he had got $50 a day in per diem to go use with whatever they want. If a job, however, went long, the business owner was having to make up for that per diem that he didn't give them at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the job, in their next pay cycle. And if the job went short, he was having to pull money out of payroll in the next pay cycle and explain why he was doing that to make up for their per diem as well. What we did is we solved it with the same card solution, to where on a daily basis, the $50 was pushed to each of those employees that was out on the job site. Job goes long, go into the system, cancel the next day's deposit onto the card, do that for the rest of the cards. It's a very easy process. It's just a sweep cancel for all the loads on those cards. Job went long, he was able to actually go in and add money to those cards on a daily basis and just continue that automatic push to those cards from his management portal on our end. So again, the pay piece, the per diem piece, and the spend piece were the three that we saw with this company here in Birmingham, where we were able to immediately impact efficiency in which payments were being made.
So now the question, Clay, is how do you get paid?
It's a great question, and we get it all the time. We get paid on the interchange, and for some people, that doesn't make sense until we explain it. And dive into that in particular. Every time a card is, doesn't matter if it's an American Express credit card, if it's a Dash Solutions payroll card, or if it's a Visa that you got from your bank, there are certain companies that get a little piece of that pie when you swipe it, right? People, you may see it at a restaurant, right? They may charge you 2% if you use credit
2%.
card.
I mean, everybody. Yeah. I mean, I could use PayPal. Anytime money exchanges hands, somebody gets 2.5% somewhere.
That's right. Exactly. And oftentimes that 2.5% is split up into little pieces for a lot of the different companies involved, right? You have the merchant processor, the actual tool that you're using to swipe your card in. You have the bank, right? Whoever the bank is that may be working with your card processor to hold the account and hold the money for you. You then also have the actual card company, right? So in this instance, it would be MasterCard. In other instances, it's Discover or Amex or whatever it is. So that 2% gets split up. What Dash does is we have built relationships with the merchant processor, with the bank, and then also with the card companies. So we get a little crumb of everybody's piece of the pie. And that's why our fees are so low. That's where we make our primary source of our revenue. When the card is swiped, when the card is used, we just get a percent of everybody else's percentage.
Because you're going to pay the percentage anyway. I mean, every time you use a MasterCard or even PayPal,
It's
it doesn't
always
matter.
charged.
Everybody gets a piece.
And it's built into the purchase cost of whatever the goods or service is already. So it's nothing that's an additional charge to the cardholder themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, we have guidelines for all of our cardholders, and I mentioned that all of our solutions are designed to be used at no cost by them. If they venture outside of those, then they may get charged 50 cents here or 50 cents there for that specific transaction where they didn't follow the rules. But for the most part, if everybody follows the rules with our card solutions, they're not going to get charged anything on top of what the actual merchant
what they're
or
already paying already, right? So it isn't
That's
anything
correct.
additional to what they're already paying. Got it. Okay, well,
That's
this
correct.
almost sounds too good to be true, but let's say it's not. Okay. So
Okay.
so Clay, tell me, how do people get in touch with you if they want to use the system?
It's a good question, Paul. And obviously, the best way to be able to do it is through you, through your company, right? You all are a partner of Dash Solutions. That's why Lewis and I are here in the first place. And the best way to be able to do it is to reach out to people like yourself who have the connection with us. They then can have a conversation with us. We can kind of go through this process similar to what we did on your hypothetical situation to figure out, take a more consultative approach to the payments that they're currently making and figure out which one of our solutions fits best.
Right.
And from
So
there,
like my company's Contractor Staffing Source, but if they just hear this on the podcast and it's, who knows out
yeah,
there, they can just call you directly. Is that possible?
they can call me directly or they can shoot us an email. The emails are both pretty simple. Mine is C and then my last name, Buckwheitz, BUCHWEITZ at dashsolutions.com. And Lewis's is the exact same. His is going to be L Campbell, CAMPBELL at dashsolutions.com. And both are going to be easy ways to get in touch with us. If they can't get a hold of us in either of those methods, they can always shoot an email to partnerdev at dashsolutions.com. And all three of those we can shoot over to
By
you.
looking at your
But
website, you can also
again,
go to the website, can't you?
they can also go to the website. Yep, there's a form to be able to reach out to us directly to our sales team through that as well. But again, we like to give the credit where the credit's due to you and to your
Okay.
podcast. We want to make sure that they go
Okay,
through the
cool.
right channels.
That sounds good. Okay, well, if any, I would say this is becoming more relevant because one of the downsides of AI is the bad guys are getting really smart. So it's like
That's right.
I mean, every once in a week I get something on a PayPal invoice I didn't pay, but it isn't PayPal, but it looks like PayPal, or I get
Oh
it.
yeah.
I mean, they're getting more clever, more clever. So, phishing and all that kind of stuff as far as fraud, it's getting easier and easier to do for the guys that are doing it. So this might be a good solution for that. So thanks, Clay. I
Yeah. Just
appreciate you
imagine what
giving
they
a
can do with your
solution.
paper checks as well. I mean,
That's right.
you got a paper check out there with your account and routing number floating around. That is a really bad situation to have.
That's true. That's true. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, Clay. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul.